All right, folks, welcome back. It is reset day again, and we are in the final weekend, right? The final week. This is 10th week. It's the final stream covering what is it? As above, so below. Usually these are fairly uneventful, obviously from week 4 and on, right? So for me, week 5 and on, typically it's dailies, get your weeklies, haul completed, and off to the next module. It's been pretty mellow these days in Neverwinter, but seems pretty okay. You know, things are fairly steady. I usually use this time to reflect on things, collect some stories. I have a few pocket topical things. Perhaps they might come up later. Um, there is a chance it's probably not today. We'll end with some like concluding remarks, maybe some things to look forward in the future, maybe make some few guesses or some wishful thinking, some hopium for the next module. As far as I know, there was an official statement released not so long ago that said at least the next two modules, you know, for 2025. 2025 seems like a locked in case for Neverwinter. So we'll re engage in this in another 3 months. It has been kind of pretty quick. So in the next, it's going to be another lull period for 2 to 3 months. And until then, right, this will be our last casual Mondays doing our weekly hauls. So let's get right into it, shall we? Oh yeah, that's right. And there's login bonuses. Right, these login bonuses have been pretty nice to see. I wonder why I got 2 of those. Anyways. All right. So what do we have for carryover this time around? Do we have activities for this one? No, we don't. Right? Yeah, we have to grab our activities. Okay. Oh, since we have to grab our activities, we'll do the repeatables instead. So here's our 80. If we pick up any lockboxes, we'll try to open them and see if we get the mythic mount, right? That's always fun. A little Gambo, a little gotcha. It's not really that big of a gotcha, largely because Legacy had currency. All right, let's turn this in. Yeah, we'll do 4 repeatables, right? 4 repeatables as opposed to the heroic encounters. So let's go and do our weekly. Didn't end up getting an update to the set, like weapon set. None of the characters got upgraded weapon set. At this point, my 2 of my 3 tunes are so outdated. It's like from 5 modules ago. Doesn't stop you from completing content or anything like that, so not a deal breaker. But the random loot system, waiting for like things to drop even though you complete runs, that's still a thing in this. I think it's still a low point most of the time. The threshold and in the number of repeated cycles you need to do in order to get enough currency for the trade-in, I still think is not reflexive enough or scalable enough for the availability of queuing for the casual person. Maybe for people who have established groups and stuff, but that's usually a given. For those people, it's usually a moot point, right? Not a change, something that wouldn't actually inspire additional increase in play or anything like that. They've already committed to investing so and so amount of time, right? like myself. Regardless if the gear set or something is not available or I didn't get it, I'll make it work. And if it doesn't, then I'll get the stuff, whatever the system requires. But in this case, no pressure to do so. So still sporting things from like 3 modules ago. One could see it as a silver lining for making it casual forward. Not a very strong like requirement to upgrade. It's felt though. It's definitely felt. Like there are situations like, oh hey, I'm getting hit this hard because yep. You look back on it, it's like, yep. Gotta explain it. Although the way the percentage system works and the rating system works, it still scales pretty okay. Still okay. Alright. Excellent balance still trumps it provides enough leeway in stats. If you have a good stat balance, right? Provided you meet the item level requirement. I think 2 of my characters, the barbarian and the fighter, is so outdated now that they might actually end up being barred from being barred because their item level is too low to have access to the new area. That's how low it is. You can often make up for it by knowing, you know, your stats and how you're playing from a player perspective. But yeah, I think I am gonna need to upgrade. I'm gonna need to upgrade my Blade Master's loadout and my Dreadnought's loadout soon, because their item level is so low that you can't even enter the solo area. One of the reasons behind that, in my opinion, is there's no... Okay, so this is something that PSO2 and GS does that I feel is absent in a live service model that is Neverwinter. And occasionally, every like 3 or 4 updates, there is a weapon set or there's a like gear set that is rewarded based on people's continuous upkeep. As in, if you play during a very specific time and you upkeep and continue to create gear, you can turn them in collectively in a way to upkeep yourself. Be it like the character or some metric in the character for playtime, right? Something that rewards a commitment of playtime versus efficiency. Like, oh, you pop in, you get the stuff really quickly. It does cheapen, it does, quote unquote, sentimentally or elitism. It does bring down elitism, right? What I mean by that is elitists will have problems with that. It cheapens their achievements and aptitude and their gear and stuff. And that can create friction because the vast majority, I would say still the vast majority of the population now that exists in Neverwinter are vet players who that have quite a level of pride on the gear they have because they earned the gear, right? It's through hard work and whatnot. So, however, this game does not still consistently reward people for being consistent as opposed to extraordinary in... You can be both consistent and extraordinary, but being consistent as is lackluster reward for accessibility when it comes to the idea of gear. It's a little bit more approachable nowadays. It's on the upswing because there are campaign gear that keeps you relevant, right? Keeps you accessible. So I have to go out of my way to do those things. It's a disproportionate amount of time required to do those, though. Like, compared to the efficiency of, oh, having a team, you farm this out, done. Instead, it's disproportionate in terms of time. To get this, you have to sit here and do the campaign zone for an unequivocal disproportionate amount of extra time compared to the alternative, which is sit there, spam LFG, and try to get... They're getting closer. I would say one of the pros of the recent module is the design is getting them closer and closer, which creates a more of a live service feel, because a substantial number of people like to play or would like to feel like they want to play the game and be rewarded for playing, as opposed to performance. Now, hear me out here. I know it's fantastic to be rewarded for good performance as well. That is certainly a very difficult trade-off. Because if you're basing everything on performance, I would like to say that one could ask any of the other people who say that performance is life, performance is... I would like to think that when you sleep, when you sleep, when you eat, when you have your favorite cup of coffee, you're not grading it on performance all the time, right? So when you're thinking about a game that is part of a lifestyle and you're saying, oh yeah, you know, I gotta work for my coffee, or I gotta work for my good sleeping habits and whatnot, that screams to me like you're probably gonna quit eventually, right? At some point, it's like, nah, it's not worth the effort. Meanwhile, live service models are a balance of that. You want the idea of a cozy, like, oh, you know what I could do to pass the time and want to chill and hang out with friends? Live service game. That does not necessarily make you and remind you and constantly tell you that you have to perform in order to enjoy something, right? It's largely one of the reasons one of the biggest trends in game design are cozy games. Cozy games are very appropriate for the live service model. However, obviously, you can have a blend of that. And it's getting there, in my opinion, the balance between the whole, like, the maintenance version, quality of life changes versus, like, stuff that discourages consistent play, but encourages luck-based and opportunistic play. So, for example, yeah, login bonuses are a very controversial topic, right? In fact, I believe login bonuses are either banned in certain regions, largely because it creates consistency that can lead to abuse, right? Like, for example, it can obligate one sub to FOMO and have an unhealthy relationship with that. That is the abusive side of things. While at the same time, it's abusive because it's incredibly habit forming, right? Now, there are definitely healthy ways to try to implement that. And in this case, the new quote-unquote addition to the Neverwinter's trick, or like pattern of adopting live service model things is login bonuses, which I just mentioned today. Periodic login bonuses, right? That's kind of a quality of life thing where like, oh hey, thanks for playing our game. We don't want to do this too often, kind of thing, but it's nice to show appreciation for those who enjoy chilling in your game, and that's pretty neat. And I think there's a moderation to that. I think lots of the terrifying effects have been largely hyperbolic due to the exploitation of login bonuses. Like, for example, the early days of login bonuses is you have this malicious way of making the last item in a login bonus the best, like the best thing you want. So the problem with that is the login bonus is that you have to log in every single day and not miss a day for 30 days or something absurd, right? That is what a lot of there are a couple places, couple governing bodies that more or less, but potentially not enforced, but made a statement about banning such things. I don't think Cryptic does not fall in, like Cryptic, Dika, however, whatever you want to refer to them, did not fall into that pit. The login bonuses are incredibly generous. In fact, some of the events and all of the stuff, their investment is in between now. It's not like it's been dialed back. So there's quite a lot of scaling for great quality of life things. Like in an event, you only have to participate 12 out of the 24 days. Or, you know, if this is a week-long thing, it's a percentage of that. Instead of the old days, which one of the earlier marks is you have to participate in every single day to see the best reward. So you're obligated based on FOMO not to miss a day. And once you miss a day, that player is going to be like, oh, well, I don't care anymore. Let's just leave the game, right? Because that's probably the nature of the game all the time. That was, in my opinion, a consequence of games like Korean MMOs. I think Korean MMOs really take it far, incredibly, arguably and debatably become incredibly abusive early on. The reason why I'm saying that is because I was part of that era. Like, I played Korean MMOs that required you to perform every single day without missing a day, and it actually requires you to execute on performances, as opposed to like saying, hey, thanks for playing our game, here's some stuff, and I hope you guys appreciate and enjoy the holidays and whatnot. But the holiday stuff requires massive performances, as in you have to be on your A game in order to make use of celebrating the holidays in a video game. So things like that have become a lot less potentially disagreeable. And I think Cryptic and Dika, not that people talk about these things too often, I have noticed, at least in my opinion, that all the thresholds and requirements and attendance have been loosened, right? The effort, and while balancing their monetary incentives, like how long a player should be playing the game and how do we encourage player to spend money on the game, that kind of thing. There is a balance to it. You know, incentivizing, hey, if you want the whole thing and you're not going to be here, here's an opportunity. You can spend some money, right? Those things are adequate, in my opinion, when the requirement that you're asking for is also reasonable. It's a little bit different. It's a malicious and predatorial when you make the requirements unbelievable and then sell something out of convenience, because that would mean that you're insisting that you made it incredibly difficult in order for you to sell a product, right? Or sell a convenience. And I think ultimately Neverwinter, whoever is in charge nowadays who calls these things, it's a lot more relaxed. Like, hey, do you want more of this currency? Well, you can buy this if you want, but you don't really have to do that much to reach the threshold of the milestone. And I think that is a trend that's been happening for like in the like 6 or 7 popular live service games that I follow because I wanted to see what models, like what people are doing around, that have gone to a point where, yeah, that's no wonder those people continue to play those games. Maybe it's a different topic of how long and how these people are addicted. That's a different topic. But overall, it's not creating a a potential consequential negligence on behalf of the developer and the business. When you demand that a player log in every single day they play this game, at least for an hour, that's a very directed and planned and an intentional malicious preying on habits and whatnot. And this does not apply to Neverwinter. It loosely applied to Neverwinter in the early days when the standard was, well, if everyone's doing it, then of course we can do it too, right? That kind of thing, because they were following the lowest common denominator when it comes to design. Nowadays, it's great. It's great to see that, oh, hey, here's a event. I know that the event is no longer, like, some people would argue, well, the event doesn't give you anything, so it's not worth it. It's a moot point. I don't think it's a moot point. The idea is that you see these design and they'll probably consider these in the future. If they introduce a new event type, the event type would take into consideration, like, okay, so our event runs for 14 days. Let's commit the player to half of that time. And that sounds incredibly reasonable. And then offer a convenience in case you're going to miss all of it, right? And here's your convenience. If you have money, you're busy off making money instead of playing this event, you can at least still get the stuff. No FOMO attached, right? Amazing, right? I think that's a great balance, as opposed to, oh, everyone's probably going to buy this because it's pay to win, because otherwise you have to spend every waking day for the next month playing this exact thing. That is often how the early popularization of Korean MMOs were like every waking day. And if you can't do every waking day, then you pay for it. You pay for the convenience, which, in my opinion, is where the whole idea of pay to win got softened into. Originally, pay to win was just blatant, right? You pay because it's inaccessible to anyone who doesn't. And then it kind of got softened to, okay, we're just going to make this really, really hard. And if you pay, it becomes more manageable and easier. But you can still do it the hard way. And that feels like the softened pay to win that of today. The opinion that a game is pay to win because it softens the difficulty, be it consistency or performance. It's usually consistency. So like time gates, right? Time gates are one that can be circumvented by paying. And that can feel artificially the softened way of pay to win. You gain access to things sooner. And that sooner creates a founder's effect, right? It creates opportunities sooner. And that in itself has value. That's inaccessible if you didn't pay. So nowadays, that's more of the modern concern, the modern day concern, as opposed to the blatant selling of something inaccessible to a particular body of that practice has largely been extinct, right? No longer a thing that publishers, and specifically the publishers, could get away with, right? I can still see most definitely a maturation of this idea, but I earnestly think I have less reservations recommending or suggesting things that have a more proactive, healthy relationship design, right? Hey, don't worry. You can play our game for like 30 minutes. If you really like it and you have some extra time, let us give you the option of what happens when you're on summer vacation. Well, no time gates, right? Don't worry. This game doesn't have time gates either. And then you make the stipulation like, hey, you know, we don't have time gates, but please respect, you know, be transparent about the idea, like content will only arrive every 3 to 4 months. So know that you can pace yourself and enjoy yourself for 3 or 4 months. So I think one of the biggest telltale signs of lately of why is this guy just chilling here? Lately has been the idea of expectations being broadcast, as opposed to there's better or worse about this type of thing, like pros and cons. I'm talking about trends that are happening now that is not of my own opinion. My opinions actually differ dramatically from this. But the idea is with transparency and expectation, right? When you broadcast, hey guys, our next mod is coming 3 or 4 months. So remember that we have no time gates. We have no... and there's no strong incentive to do everything at once, but there's also no strong incentive to do everything all the time, every time. The choice is yours, right? Know that whatever you're doing with our game, please try our game and come back every 3 to 4 months to commit the time that you're willing in any form, right? That type of transparency creates an expectation where people no longer, the vast majority of gamers, would like to be able to plan around these things, in my opinion. So they no longer get surprised by, oh no, the module gets delayed, or oh no, like this content doesn't span 3 or 4 months because I did it all in one day. They know this is the content. It's going to last. You have 3 or 4 months to complete this content, which gives the onerous to the player, like, okay, well, I don't need to do this now. I still got 3 to 4 months to do this. And then you're like, I have 3 weeks left. I'll probably crank this stuff out in the last like 3 days before the new content arrives. That kind of thing is kind of the strategy that is most consistent nowadays for live service models. You are able to plan and spread out the content without specifying how long the content is supposed to last. So the tough part is digging yourself a hole, in my opinion, in terms of PR and whatnot, by stating how much content you have and how long it should last. Because ultimately, that was set an expectation for it, a criteria for it, as opposed to telling them, hey, you know, we release content every 3 or 4 months. Pace yourself the way you want to pace yourself. We have no blocks, no time frames, no prescription on when you're going to do this. If you finish this all at once in one day, go for it, right? It does make it a little bit difficult to know how to pace the content though. So that can be a publisher's nightmare, right? Where like if a publisher says how much resource do you need, it can make it a little difficult to gauge. But I would say that goes a long way to dispelling discontent and potential like disappointments and whatnot. I am not of this opinion. I actually think whatever the developer do, I prefer to be surprised. If the game closed tomorrow, I certainly will be surprised. But at the same time, my life wouldn't end because Neverwinter ended. Like if they said like, oh, tomorrow we're closing a game because we have a new game we're gonna start today. It's like, all right, I'm gonna try your new game. Like Like for me, my opinion is probably a minority opinion, especially with live service games, because you can become really attached and identify to a live service game. I see it as a chapter, right? I see it as my relationship with the developers, like my experience with this group, not the actual literal virtual avatar and whatnot. That's a minority opinion. On the other side, having predictable roadmaps saying this is when this is going to drop, this is when this is going to drop. Have fun, guys. You could finish it in 1 day, you could finish it in 3 months. It's up to you. We trust you. Know that this is when to expect things. And when that is set, expectations rules, in my opinion, at the moment. The current trend and behavioral trend is often expectations. When you buy something, it better be worth $50 if you put a $50 $50 thing on it, right? Price on it. But the one thing about live service games, especially freemium games, is there isn't a price on it, right? So in my opinion, to leverage that flexibility of not having a price on it, you do gating or creating things that create value in itself in your game design can backfire. Like how long does a dungeon run take? That will end up being determined by the player's value system. And those things are enough to already generate discontent, right? So adding to the fuel by saying, oh, we have a lot of content. This is how much the content is worth. This is how much time that it takes to complete this content. People normalize that. For example, when you say, we are only going to release content every 3 or 4 months, one of the basic assumptions is like, oh, they believe that their content will last 3 or 4 months. If for a PR way of being clarity, I would write an article, in my opinion, about, hey, we have this roadmap. This is how we develop our game. And usually through the checks and balances, it's about 3 or 4 months that we can comfortably sustain a developing model. This is not to suggest that we are only able to create 3 or 4 months worth of content and that the content was designed to last that long, but this is the amount that we find that's reasonable to sustain. So now the idea is, oh, okay, so whatever resource they have decided this is how much they're going to make. And in that case, there's no longer assumptions and presumptions and wild expectations of, okay, well, they thought this was worth 3 months of content, but it only lasts me 1 day. And then that becomes a point of this discontent, in my opinion. I think a lot of that comes with freemium games, because freemium games do not have a set value. It can be a boon, though. It can be very useful to leverage that since there's no value. Now, when games come out with a fixed price, they have their own situation, right? Their own problem or their own compromises. One being when they sell their game, is it going to ultimately meet the majority of the people's valuation of the game? How long the game should be, what quality is it? And that's heavily influenced and uncontrolled by the developer. One way the developer has been offsetting that, in my opinion, is they have been increasing the sentimental value of the game. For example, Sega spent a lot of its time inviting the people who worked on it, voice actors, other fans, to spend time streaming, like interacting and hosting normal, regular interactions, which actually Neverwinter tried a couple of times. Like Cryptic have went out of their way to make it happen, right? They tried early in the early stages where you had like a developer interview and whatnot, developer streams. Those things can be all right, but ultimately I think celebrating who is behind the people and then seeing like what their thought process behind it is a lot more appropriate for games that have fixed value, because those fixed value require levels of sentimentalism in order to grab that cost. When you're doing live service games, especially a freemium game, the value system is forked. Like, there's no metric. The sky's the limit. It's free. So it's like dividing by zero. How do people normalize what to expect from your live streams? You know, your community manager or something. It's absurd, because what happens, which is to the detriment of live service games in general, when they host a live stream, you're being compared to other live streams. Whether that is intent or not, a smaller but more rational group perhaps would say, oh, I'm comparing this to other dev streams, right? The other dev streams, how good are those streams? That kind of thing. But in the long run, like, it is unfair and it is unfortunate. But when you start doing live streams and you have representatives of your game, they are often going to be compared to streamers of said games and whatnot. So then you try to recruit those streamers of said game, and you might get a mixed bag, right? Why do I know that? Because I used to play Neverwinter in that capacity, and wasn't ready for it. I would say the group in general was not ready. It was an interesting experiment, right? It was an interesting experiment. I think PSO2 also does this. They still continue to have pre-recorded broadcasts and live, like one-time aired monthly live broadcast, and then it is recorded and distributed again afterwards. Sega in general has committed to this type of approach wholeheartedly across most of their games. Each of their groups have regular upkeep and stuff, and usually it's about talking about insights that other people wouldn't ask questions about. So it's not necessarily answering people's dying questions. There are some frequently asked questions, but the attraction is things that are privilege to the guests or the developers. So like right now they're spending a lot of time generating hype for Irate Yakuza, and each like maybe like every 2 or 3 weeks there's a showcase of the voice actor of one of the characters again and again. This is not a freemium game, so these are the things that are the upcoming strategies to boasting that other end. Live service games generally are more impacted by the consistency of rewarding people who are consistent. So it's largely based on the word of mouth and consistency of people playing, right? So if you have a game that like every so often, which I treat it this way, I treat live service games this way. It could be a biased way of thinking about it, but every 3 or 4 months I will play and I will stream Neverwinter 10 days in 10 weeks, you know, 1 day every day, and that's good. Now you multiply that by your investment in it, then you'll have possibly hundreds or thousands of people who do at minimum 10 days out of the 3 or 4 month period, right? And that consistency, in my opinion, sells itself, especially when it comes to an algorithm-based exposure. Algorithm-based exposure rotates on a timely basis. So if you can carry your exposure for 3 or 4 modules across a calendar year, then if it's on YouTube, for example, or on Twitch, not less so on Twitch, but on YouTube, after a year, all of that content cycles again for exposure, right? So as a product that is going to continuously be kept up, harnessing quality towards consistency usually is a more forward business model, usually, as opposed to elevating and front loading value, which is an approach that is heavily now popularized by the success of Capcom, Bandai Namco, and Sega, when they're selling games that features things that are regularly kept up, right? Like character trailers, consistent like updates. There are duds too, like there are hits and misses. Like for example, Mortal Kombat MK1 did not do as great because they still did all those things like combat cast and whatnot, but it did not hit the way Tekken and Street Fighter 6, and then they go through honeymoon periods, and so those stuff still occur, but generally speaking it's far more consistent in success, like lucrative success and mutual success in general, than other variances. Not that that's relevant to live service models. Live service models are, if I had to list some live service models, Fortnite, right? Fortnite is uncontested when it comes to live service model inspiration. Interesting. I don't know if I don't follow. I don't know how much information is available when it comes to like the Cryptic design or what their marketing team is like and what they have to do, their transparency on things nowadays. Like, is there even a dev stream? I don't think I've ever followed any of that stuff. It was in a period where the game was transitioning from something that it was not, or it wants to be something that it was not, and then so all of that gets drowned out by discontent, right? I think the player community was incredibly in disarray due to lots of transitioning periods, and I didn't want to participate in that. I sort of did, though. I sort of did, and it only bled into more of it. So it was an interesting experience. I met a few people. I no longer talk to them. They moved on and whatnot. And I met a bunch of people who haven't moved on, but I have a very strong indifference towards them, largely due to the nature that the way content surrounding Neverwinter was used as an opportunistic grab at opportunities, right? That's a little redundant, but at the same time, it was not treated as a live service model. It was not, those individuals who were using or representing this were not embracing the model that whatever embracer, I suppose, formerly, who was the former owner, Perfect World, was moving or transitioning into. So you had representatives, you have content representatives and people who treat it as though it was something that was not going to be what it was going to be, in my opinion, right? You made content that was very reminiscent of what Neverwinter's model was before, not what it is now or was going to be. And that's was my largest disagreement. Not that I really disagree or not. I was in the minority, so I wasn't going to do anything about it. I just continued to play the game. Well, I'm still playing the game, right? And have a very healthy, neutral, largely neutral but slightly optimistic playing this game. And yet it's odd that I always get I occasionally get the comment like, you're still playing this game? It's like, well, yeah, I haven't like stopped playing the game. Like it's that dissonant. Even when I was trying to promote a live service mindset for this game, it was drowned out. It was incredibly drowned out by people who want the game to be something that I couldn't see why they would think that. Like, you know, announcement after announcement, changes after changes, different models changes, and it's constantly filled with the echo chamber of, oh, this is not the Neverwinter I wanted. Like, I want Neverwinter to be that old Neverwinter that I come to love and whatnot, and that was the large majority of the representation as well. So I'm more of an embracer of change, largely because I'm not the one making the game. So sometimes one has to trust in the process in order to see its value. I was already a person who played live service games and whatnot as Neverwinter was transitioning, right? So there was a lot of philosophical choices and whatnot about how to interpret the value of Neverwinter, and I feel it was a groupthink issue where everyone agreed on something, on a vision, and if you're not in agreement with it, you are pushed out, right? And everything about myself was not the same. So ultimately, who is the person that continues to play the game? Well, the people who the game was designed to agree with, right? I would be one of them. Like, I know what it's like, in my opinion, as I thought, what it's like to have a healthy relationship with a live service game. Meanwhile, I think lots of people wanted something else. And I hope they found something else. Apparently, Elder Scroll Online was that thing. Lots of people found that was the thing. I don't necessarily have to juggle that, both of them. I could play Elder Scroll Online when I want to. It's not a big deal, right? I think the vetting process was based on a popularity contest, and that led to the downfall, in my opinion. One contributed to a large misguided initiative on trying to create popular representation. People who are focused on hot opportunities, exclusive deals, or exclusive access to things, that is in the opposite nature of live service. A live service model, the more exclusive something becomes, the more and less likely it will be sustainable and agreeable in the long term. It's expecting that you have exceptional people all the time to prop up your game. That's like hoping every person who plays your game is Albert Einstein or something, or every child who comes to your science course is incredibly talented in exactly the way you want it to be, so that no one has a disagreement on who has an advantage and who doesn't. And that's kind of one of the downfalls, in my opinion. One of the biggest dissonance. You had a group of people who largely agree that exceptionalism is the reason why the game is popular. And then you have me and maybe one or two other people who believe that you could play the game forever because it's a cozy walk in a park. It's the same park. you know, you don't have events all the time at that park. Not everyone is a super athlete at that park, but it's a nice park. Konbawa, Cheeto? You've decided to begin learning Chinese. Ooh, how's that going? It's actually fun so far, although I only know how to introduce yourself. How do you introduce yourself in Chinese right now? What did you resonate with? Oh, and by the way, how are you going about learning Chinese? It is 12 a.m. my time, so 晚上好，晚上好，Cheeto. Yeah, I was don't mind me. I was ruminating and talking about life and video games and relationships with video games. That's usually my jam when I'm wrapping up Neverwinter. I hope your Japanese is also making it a lot quite a lot fun learning Chinese, because I love that part about knowing Japanese and learning Chinese as a ladder. And whenever that clicks, it's like double the reward. Hello Chinese, fair enough. You're gonna use that for now just to get started with. Yeah, Hello Chinese is a great way to start because it's a no investment. It doesn't require an investment initially, so you can find out. Yeah. Hello Chinese is excellent. Oftentimes, once Hello Chinese form the basis, then people usually go to Do Chinese, Do Chinese, and or Chairman Bao for their reading stuff. Chairman Bao has articles on news and whatnot, so it gives you like a application of getting other types of information while reading in Chinese. And then Du Chinese is a reading comprehension, a very strong, heavily focused reading comprehension type. And hello, Du Chinese is a compliment, obviously. I'm suggesting as a compliment. If you're really into reading stuff, it's often highly recommended, as far as I know. I do not have any personal experiences with any of these apps, though. As a disclaimer, this is what I've read collectively. It comes up every once in a while. I am currently exploring Hansa Hero, of course, as a form of bolstering my vocabulary. And largely, I'm specifically looking to bolster my vocabulary for the time being. The Japanese kanji is actually quite helpful in learning meaning behind Hanzi. Yeah, I bet. May I ask, like, in terms of Japanese, how are you doing your order? Do you do it at the same time? Or do you stagger them every other day? Like, how does your balance between your Japanese and your Chinese? What is your schedule like? Yeah, it's Baker. Yeah, okay. All right. I think I remember what we talked about previously. You'll probably have to remind me a couple times of the things we're talking about. But yeah. Yeah, like how is your Chinese fitting into everything? I think deliberately trying to find connections to Japanese is an incredible way to double down on being creative and also utilizing your ladder. So depending on, that's why I'm kind of curious about the interactions. Double downing on something like that kind of makes it almost a great transition period, like a transition way of maybe not necessarily thinking in English very frequently and whatnot. That's kind of my experience at the moment. Although, take it with a grain of salt because I usually think in Chinese quite often already when I was learning Japanese, largely because Fujianese is part of my life. So listening in something, it can be something that I can't relate to. You change your username, but yeah, your Japanese learning isn't quite frequent now because I'm at a point where I think you're fluent enough, but it has helped a lot in the beginning of your Chinese language. Well, now you can write Chinese in the context of English. Isn't that in the context of Chinese, I can only imagine how much fun that would be. You know, like, so whenever you're learning Chinese, you can ask yourself, how do I say that in Japanese? I do that a lot. It's like my favorite. It's one of my favorite activities. Even when I'm only learning like basic vocabulary, you know, just vocabulary, I'm like, what's the closest thing I have that's coming to my head about Japanese? Most of the time, I'm talking about the weird idiosyncrasies of writing Japanese and Chinese. Like, oh, so that's the way they're writing that. And right now in Hansa Hero, I'm doing a traditional Chinese course. So like, they're traditional representations. So I've got this like doubly layered experience where I'm like, oh, so that's the Japanese character that was simplified that happens to also be traditional Chinese. So I say that a lot now, like, oh, okay, so that's the simplified character, and now I know the simplified character, but now it makes a lot of sense with the Japanese character because the Japanese character is the same character as that. You think learning so far has been really interesting. I didn't think a tonal language would be for you, but you're enjoying it maybe more than Japanese. Oh, interesting. Do you feel like let me see. You've noticed something though. Chinese compared to Japanese is so much more consistent with its grammar. Japanese differs so much. It's a lot more words for many kanji. Oh, and you have to keep in mind, or at least this might also be the thing about consistency. There are things that are absent that you constantly have to think about and get used to that is present in Japanese in the beginning. So I think that leads to a lot of that too. And also Chinese overlaps with English when it comes to the consistency of the grammar. So there are quite a lot of things that you might not necessarily need to know, but you can feel. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, context clues quite a lot in everyday sentences. Yeah, and in Chinese, there's a lot of inference without necessarily needing to learn the context clue. Like what I mean is, oh, okay, you eat this. It's like, yeah, and then yesterday you eat this. Like, yeah, tomorrow you eat this. Yeah, mm-hmm. You're eating this? It's like, but the eating this is like, it's another word that doesn't ever change. It's a character that doesn't ever. They're one of the biggest noticeable things is that Chinese don't conjugate, so it makes for like a Lego block. It feels more like Legos. A lot, at least that's my opinion, right? My opinion is that more like building blocks than finding ways to make it more elaborately, like you have to remember a lot more things, which isn't that nice? It's a different experience. I'm not, we're not saying which one's better or which one's worse, but it's a different experience. I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying the little differences, the little but significant differences and all that. Yeah, the unchanging thing is funny. Yeah, I kind of like how there's an unchanging aspect of the words used. It makes it simpler to find what you say. Yeah. I think the one thing eventually that will make it be like, oh, okay, so this is what the Chinese part is the thing about homonyms. Homonyms is where that whole like people talk like, oh yeah, tonal language is not for me and kind of thing. And my thought is, oh, don't worry. In my opinion, like by the time you get there, you're like, oh no, I'm ready for this tonal thing. Like that's why this stuff exists, because of homonyms and whatnot. I'm not sure if this has anything to do with why you think the tonal thing you're enjoying it maybe more. Tonal things, in my opinion, give a little bit, it loosens up the restrictions on the sounds you make, right? You're kind of sliding, it's not very tense and sharp and stuff, right? At least in my opinion. So it's kind of gravitating closer to English, where like, oh, you can kind of flex up and flex down and feels like a rounded experience. Meanwhile, in Japanese, you have that very sharp discipline thing, which is something that people really quite like. However, there is even more, in my opinion, not that it's better or worse, there's a melody, like tonality ends up adding an extra layer of melody to it. Japanese does have this, right? Pitch accent, right? Does have this. However, it's not part of the curriculum, if you know what I mean. Like, there's no thing that normalizes the pitch accent when you're learning characters and stuff. In Chinese, that it's become normalizing. It immediately normalizes you to know the flow and to feel the flow of the tonality, right? Whenever you say like ni hao, right? When you say ni hao, it's like, oh, what the heck just happened, right? The tonality created a larger range of, okay, that sounds wrong. And it becomes like a very enjoyable stopgap. It no longer becomes the whole thing where, oh man, this pitch accent is so nuanced. So I'm not going to be able to, like, I'm not going to remember this because it's so nuanced. And then, but over time, you'll get it, right? Fair enough. It's not part of the curriculum though. So when you're hyper focused on something like ma, right? Ma, right? Ma. Those things are part of the Chinese things. So pitch action in Chinese can be honestly more difficult to understand strictly because of the fact that it isn't part of the language itself. Yeah, it's the only way people speak the words. Yeah, it's and in Chinese, the tonality, it's there. So what I mean is, it creates the mechanic of being able to appreciate the tonality, which ends up aiding in the idea that it doesn't feel like something you can't understand in only one specific way. Pitch accent is a different story. What like I talked about this today during Hanzi Hero and Wanikani. The things that are difficult to understand are the things that you are incompetent in or does not have an incentive to encourage to familiarize. Okay? When you are not incentivized to be as interested enough about it, nor are you incentivized to educate yourself in it or become educated in it, it remains difficult to understand. Lack of interest and lack of competence perceives leads to a perception of difficulty. Tonality is an essential part of establishing competence in Chinese. So when you become interested in Chinese and you effectively practice tonality, it will ultimately feel like it is less difficult to understand. But ultimately, the things you don't understand are far more difficult than the ones you're willing to understand. Like, for example, all the languages you don't choose are going to be inherently more difficult than the languages you do choose, as a combination of interest, enjoyment, value, all those like subjective words. That usually is. Could I introduce myself and you can tell me if it's okay? I'll choose a more formal approach. Sure. I'm not entirely sure if I even know what is suggested. Go right ahead. I'll tell you what I think. I mean, I'll take it with a grain of salt, right? Because I'm also learning how to read. Yeah, let's do it. I love this. Where am I going? What is this? Pioneer. Did I do everything? Yes. So now. Oh. 你好，我是爱吗？我是爱吗？ Oh, that's kind of cute. 我是美国人，你呢？你是 Oh, Nina is probably. Oh, actually, Nisha is fine too. And you are? I think Nina is probably more common. Like, and you. Versus, it's kind of like, what was it? Like, our sanwa, right? So, Nina is probably more common. And then the rest is, yeah. I like how you gave a short version of your name. 我是爱吗? Wait, 我是爱 wait, hang on. I am I might be stepping this up. Hold up. Oh, yeah. Emma. Ima. Oh, yeah. I didn't know your real name, so I wasn't sure if you're saying your name is I, as in just I. But Ma, that's cute. Oh, Emma is cute. Ima is cute. Ima is a combination of love, and question. So you're saying like I am love, which is funny because that's kind of a cute name. Love question mark. Yeah, and then it's Nina. I'm not sure if did you learn and you like Nina? 你好 Ima Ima 我是MAKU maybe MAKU 我也是美国人 yeah 我也是美国人你现在做什么 I'm not sure how far we're going with this. I'm only asking you like, oh, so what are you doing right now? That's about as clever as I can get, really. I'm only comfortable in asking simple questions. Like, oh, what are you doing right now? Like, well, then, someone would say, well, silly goose. I'm talking to you using Chinese. So, 我现在跟你说中文 right? Something like that. Obviously, it doesn't have to be great death because I'm also trying to learn Mandarin. You learn 你是 in the conversation part of the lesson. They had said 你是 is common in a more informal conversation though. Oh, okay, okay. I thought you were going to choose a more formal approach, so I wasn't sure you wanted it to be more formal or not. Yeah, 你是 is fine. And 你好 is, yeah, it's pretty formal too. You can say hi actually. I think that is probably as casual as you can possibly get. I don't actually know what the character hi is anymore because I don't use it very often. But there is a character hi, tone 1 hi, and then like bye bye, like bye bye, like bye bye, for away. Oh, you could use hey. Oh, I didn't know you could use hey as well. That's cute. Yeah, hey. The main character, the principal character of Hey is also in Hey Se, which is for gray, the color gray. So Hey Se, that's cute. Hey, I was going to choose a formal approach, although I don't know the Hanzi for formal to say it. Ah, okay. Oh, we could do this all the time if you wanted. I love finding excuses to talk in like, you know, a learning bantering back and forth and discussing about approaches of how people are going about working around their, like, I have limited vocabulary, right? And you have limited vocabulary. What are the things we could say for the time being? I love that. Absolutely. Feel free to share at any time. Feel free to share at any time. And obviously, there's no guarantee that I'll know what you're even talking about because I'm also learning these things. But we'll, with two heads, we'll put it together. That's all you know right now, though. Hoping you learn more. Ah, okay. Nice. I'm gonna have to add 你是 你是 to my lexicon. Usually the super formal, like I'm super formal, so it would be like 我叫MAKU, right? 我叫MAKU, 你叫什么名字? Right? Like my name is this. What do you call yourself? Like what is your name? Right? Like really formal. That's like wooden formal. Like, oh, uh like I'm professor so and so. May I ask what do you call yourself? And then like in Japanese, right? Hajime mashite, right? Nice to meet you. 很高兴认识你, right? It would be like, oh, my name is this. Nice to meet you, right? 很高兴认识你, which is probably going to be like something that will probably crop up immediately for your conversation stuff. That I don't think it's too that formal. I think I say that everyone, like a lot of people that I encounter, we say that all the time. It's like hajime mashite. It's an all-purpose greeting. Nice to meet you. The teacher who explained 你是 said it's more of you are in a sense of giving the other person a push to go ahead and introduce. Yes, yeah. However, in terms of like English, like ABC, Nina, and you is also push as well. The what is your name is also push too. A lot of times, yeah, I don't know what it's like from a Chinese perspective. What is pushing? And you is typically a push in English. What is the tone of that one? It's neutral. It's 5. So 5 neutral. No tone. And it's N, so NE. Like that. Nina. Yeah. Yep. That's it. It's super for me, I say that all the time because I'm like, I don't know what to repeat the question. Oh, here's another interesting formal thing or like informal thing. Whenever I like to share this story. If you get talked at, right? Like I go to family functions all the time and people talk at me, right? The cool thing about Chinese, I'm not sure if it's the same in Japanese, if you get the same feeling, but oftentimes when people are super casual in Chinese, the answer is already in the question as a language learner. So for what I mean is, oftentimes when people are very casual with you, when they ask you a question, most of the vocabulary is already in the question. I'm not sure if I feel the same about Japanese, but when someone asks you like, 你吃了吧? Like, 你吃什么? Like, 你要不要吃什么? Right? 吃什么? Like, do you want to eat something? It's like, 吃好吃. Like, yeah, like 吃, like you would use the same words. 我要吃. 我要吃, right? I want to eat, or I need to eat, or have eat. It's already reflexive in the question. So in Chinese, a lot of times when my parents and my family members like ask me questions, you typically repeat some of the stuff they already said. And the more casual it is, the more likely that they're going to ask it in a manner in which you repeat the same thing. Like, do you want to eat something? I want to eat. That's the response. Like, have you eaten yet? I eat. I ate. Like, I eat. That's it. Like, I eat with the past tense. You still use the word eat. 我吃了. So you add an extra character, and so it minimizes the response. You already have the key words to respond to the person. I think that's one thing that I'm not entirely sure about Japanese. That is similar to Japanese in a way, since the sentence structure is switched around. I see. Like, so, like, for example, I find in terms of casual speak, when someone asks you something, that person who respond, they don't necessarily say all these things again. They oftentimes truncate it and, remove and then have to conjugate it again. In Chinese, you don't conjugate. You use the exact same words back to the person. Like, are you interested in video games? Yes, video games. Or, yes, interested in video games. You say the exact same thing, only with yes. Like, do you like video games? Yes, I like video games. And the actual words do not change. Except for like 我 and 你, the pronouns change, but it's like it's English, like what I said in English. Like, do you like video games? Yes, I like video games. So I like video games is already provided in the response, and that is a lot more normal in my opinion in Chinese. It sounds weird even in English, where like, oh yeah, I like them. Yeah, you basically respond without ma. And that's something that can be very pedantic and like redundant in English. Like, instead of saying like, oh, do you like video games? You could, in English, the colloquial, when you get very casual, you say, oh, I like them, right? You replace the words for with the pronoun or like a holder, so then you don't have to repeat exactly what they said. In Chinese, in my opinion, it's actually more natural. Like for me, it feels normal to say the exact same thing back minus a few things or change a few things. And in a way, it helps with practicing. Like I think studying conversations is pretty amazing in Chinese. Most of my Fujianese that I didn't learn with books or anything comes from listening and responding to my parents. And not in the sense that, oh, of course, if you talk to people, you'll learn the language. I'm talking about the propensity of learning new language largely because you're going to say the same thing over and over again. Like whenever my parents say something, I have to repeat that word back to them most of the time. So you're forced to kind of naturally say those words anyways. There is a lot less particles as well. Yeah, there's basically nothing that fulfills a particle in Chinese. There are roughly two or three things even after like my intuition that would constitute as close to a particle, right? Close to a particle. Like maybe you can't even say is not even one. Ma is the closest, right? Ma is probably the closest. Maybe like ba and ma is probably the closest thing to a particle. Or there are helping verbs that could qualify as a particle, like hui, zai, as like maybe. I think it's definitely closer to helping verbs, like I am working or I will work. So like helping verbs in English. Almost everywhere, there's in Japanese, almost everywhere it's going to have a particle after it. I actually really like that part of Japanese. Like, what I mean is, it's different, but it's also kind of nice. I kind of got used to that, so it's a great way to feel or mechanically see where the breakup is in Japanese. I totally understand why they went about doing that. In Chinese, oh man, the tonality. I know this. I'm really excited that you kind of enjoy the tonality, because tonality is what creates the natural separation. You feel the particles, in my opinion. So what I mean by that is the tonality are the particles. In a strange way. Like you feel how the breakup of the sound is through the tonality, because particles are a place where the tone, the pitch accent breaks as well. Like what I mean is it separates, it's where the inflection points are in particles, and tonality is also where the inflection points are broken up. So when you say like 现在, it's gonna break up there. So whenever you see 现在, you're gonna break there in terms of its clustering. And it's kind of like, I don't know, 今は, right? 今は stops. 今は, you end on a particle, and you say something else, you end on a particle. Say something else, you end on a particle. And that's kind of how I'm imagining my transition from Japanese and Mandarin. Like the tonality is visually or auditorily the particles of Japanese. And you get to the point where you're like, oh, okay, so I would say something like 会离开越来越我不喜欢 right 不喜欢 right 对爱 you start lumping all the tones together in a way that they naturally break up. And in this case, I think Japanese has a more visual indicator where like, oh, you can kind of know by reading where your tone and your pitch accent is going to end, where your pitch is going to undergo a change. In Chinese, you have to speak it. Or you can use pinyin too, but the pinyin is kind of tough to know where it breaks and whatnot. You have to hear it and feel the flow of it, which comes naturally, in my opinion, in a while. Here's what you found so far when comparing the two. Although Japanese pronunciation is easier in your opinion, learning the grammar can be very tricky for multiple reasons. Absolutely. Chinese can be tricky to get the hang of in the beginning due to tones and unknown sounds compared to English. Yeah, yes. That is a very common focus on no English equivalents when it comes to Chinese sounds. But once you get the hang of it, Chinese grammar can be fairly simple. It really is. Especially surprisingly for English speakers. I feel a lot of times it's kind of overlooked because it doesn't compensate for everyone's terror of tonality. Yet, even the tonality is present in English. They often do not have functions, right? Unless you're an emotional speaker or a public speaker like I would consider myself largely a public speaker. If you're not into the nuances of singing or moderating your speed and using uptones and downtones, you know, slow down and really mess around with your speech patterns, it might not serve a function. However, tonality is something that can be incredibly grasped very rapidly by an English speaker, as long as you're a very expressive speaker. If you're someone who's incredibly expressive, I think tonality is just, in my opinion, is a fun way to be expressive, but now it serves a purpose. It's a function of the language. So when you hear like, you know, ma, you can feel it's hoarse. You know, when you say mama, you can really feel that it's mother. So the tones themselves end up becoming like elicit a feeling. Like whenever you say mama, you're like, oh yeah, it's not mama. Like the moment you say mama, it's like, what the heck what am I even saying there? Two horses? Horses? That kind of thing. At least in my opinion, at some point. Articles in Japanese were hard to learn for you. I'm so glad I got to that learning curve. I really love particles. Did you ever do something called sentence diagramming in like when you were learning English? I think particles, one of the reasons why I enjoy, possibly one of the bigger reasons I like the particle system is largely because I really like this thing that I don't think people use anymore in English, and it's sentence diagramming. Sentence diagramming is a whole heck of a lot of fun, in my opinion. It's like it's like a game with English. You honestly don't remember? Yeah, so you know, imagine, right, you read an English sentence, right? I don't have like unfortunately I don't have my brush. You can't draw over Neverwinter. However, imagine you wrote, you know, I think I did. Now, if you are used to sentence diagramming, you know there's a vertical line connecting certain things. There's a breakup. You see, I think, I did. And then you know that I think is one line down to I did, because I did is modifying I think. So in that line requires a particle. So in Japanese, you would need to modify that with a particle, because you did is referring to I think. So, and then you have to flip the thing, right? So it's I did, I think. But I did, I think you need something to connect the two, right? And when you're sentence diagramming, you do that. You literally draw a line and a bracket to show that I think is attached to I did. I did in English modifies I think. So when you do it in Japanese, you write a particle there. So, you know, you say I did, particle, I think. And that's part of sentence diagramming. Oh, you did it when you learned Korean. Okay, okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, that's how I went about doing articles. At least that's how I visualize doing particles. And I still visualize when I'm reading people's papers, like English and like English papers and whatnot. I still like imagine sentence diagramming to make sure that things are grammatically correct, right? So ever since middle school, I think it was middle school, one of my English teachers introduced sentence diagramming, and I really enjoyed it. It's a great way to visualize English grammar. It's something that I don't think it's taught anymore in English, largely because English has become this really messy, you know, diverse user kind of thing. So some people might think there might be some diminished return when you're learning sentence diagramming. That's pretty neat. It's a pretty neat system. I'm kind of curious if English learners, like ESL learners, ESL do sentence diagramming at all. Korean doesn't really use particles as much. Ah, I see. But the sentence diagram helps with sentence structure and placement of words. Exactly. Yeah, and you know, English don't have particle systems as well. So it's kind of neat to when I was learning Japanese, immediately I was like, oh man, this reminds me of the first time I was learning, you know, like I was trying to get to learn more advanced grammar things, right? How do you know that a subjunctive phrase is modifying something? Like, how do you identify what's a gerund phrase versus what's an actional phrase, like an active action phrase, right? How do you decide what a participle is modifying? Which part of the gerund or the participle is modifying which subject or object in a sentence? It requires diagramming, unless you decide you use English enough and you fill it out. So it's kind of neat that it came back full circle when I was looking at Japanese grammar. Chinese is more or less still like a feel situation, but largely because it overlaps quite a lot more than people give credit for with English. So if you're already English bound, you can kind of fill out Chinese grammar a lot of times. And even if you don't, like you do something separately, I'm an English speaker, so I know what you're trying to say in Chinese as well, right? Like if you somehow magically speak Fujianese, right? You're learning Fujianese or you're learning something and you ordered it in enough like Chinese, even though it's English that you're ordering in, it's intelligible to me. My parents speak English in Chinese order, and it's intelligible to me because I'm both. Like I use both languages. So it might be an underrepresentation of when you go to China or like something, but for myself, when you write Mandarin and you're the grain of salt is when you write Mandarin, even if it's not grammatically correct to someone who's more used to using Mandarin, it is understandable to me because the way you order it can be both English or Chinese, and I will still be able to say something about it. Like, for example, yes, I didn't know your name was Emma, but I thought that could only be where your name goes, right? Because there's no like some people would immediately say like, what do you mean by you are love question mark? And my first thought was like, no, that's gotta be a name. So I keep that in mind, I suppose. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing for you personally. The Chinese people that you'll probably talk to, in my opinion, unless you go to China or maybe like talk to Taiwanese people, maybe Malaysian and whatnot, they usually know English, right? They usually know English. And yes, mainland Chinese people do know English, but their English will be closed off, in my opinion, right? And hear me out. It is very distinct. So after learning a bit of Mandarin, I have a feeling a lot of the stories I talk about, where if you listen to a Chinese person, like a mainland Chinese person, speak English, they will speak grammatically correct English because they get educated on that, I assume, in mainland China. However, since they usually spend most of their time talking to other Chinese people who speak English, to practice and whatnot, and seldomly speak to and interact with people outside in a non-Chinese environment, as in a non-Chinese internet environment or another country, it becomes very apparent the type of English words they choose and how they frame it. So if you're like a language learner who is very hyper-focused on English, practicing your English in the context of Japanese and Chinese, to me, it becomes fairly obvious even through texting. So I can't hear your accent at all. You can deliberately use AI and fool me, that's fine. However, if you are typing honestly, like through your thing, it's easier to pick up the speech patterns of a Chinese person versus an ABC like me, where like it's pretty obvious that I'm American when I'm typing these words. And I think it translates the same way when if someone is learning Mandarin, if two people who are English speakers who are learning Mandarin and they speak to each other, even if they have different competence levels, it might actually be easier to see and translate and talk to each other. My English, I've entered a lot of kind of weird situations where like, oh, this is what my parents say, and then someone else says, well, this is not what we say, and then we're both like supposedly speaking Mandarin, right? Kind of like, oh, this is not what you say in English, this is what I say in English. So that situation does come up, and I earnestly think that's kind of one of the a neat experience that's unique to language learners, people who are interested in learning more than one language, as opposed to like meeting a native speaker who's not interested in learning another language. Honestly, you're so fascinating with anyone who decides to learn a country's language, especially if it's quite hard. Languages take so long to learn and it takes dedication. The feeling is mutual. It's kind of like Japanese people speaking English with a Japanese accent. You're able to understand quite a lot of what they're trying to get across with context clues. Yes, agreed. I find it so cool when my Japanese speaking friend tries to speak English with me without knowing much about it, rather than translating everything on Google. It makes everything feel much more natural, and sometimes you even get to teach new things to them and vice versa. Yes. I think being overtly proper feels almost unnatural. It's a forced unnatural that is not the same as two people wanting to learn language and just shooting back and forth. Now, granted, if you have a teacher or something, that's a different environment, right? It's a different environment. That your expectations are changed in terms of environment. So it would feel natural if the teacher is communicating with you with your expectations. To language learners or to people who are interested in each other exchanging new things are a different dynamic too. Now, there are situations where a lot of people would get nervous where you talk to someone who isn't there, that you don't know, that wants to do that. That's usually the situation where I find that can be a consequence of people really wanting to meet a native speaker. Like, what I mean by that is, it's not you, not the odds of a native speaker wanting to be interested in another language is a gamble. However, if you do meet one, that's awesome. Otherwise, I don't think it's necessarily the end of the world if you spend time relating to other language learners who coincidentally also am interested in the same language, who have already learned other languages. It's a conversation between someone who is multilingual is very different with a conversation to someone who's only interested in their own language. And that's oftentimes when you're visiting a country and you realize that they're like, oh, your English is really good, or your Japanese is really good. And it's like, and the conversation ends, like, oh no, did I say something wrong? Like, is it something I said? Why aren't they talking to me? It's like, well, you're expecting someone who's interested in your language development. But the proper reality is that those people are behaving naturally. When you behave naturally, it's like, well, we said the thing that you need to say. We're not gonna like randomly extend the conversation, because that's actually not natural to extend a conversation largely for your language learning. However, if you talk to another multilingual person, they are more prone to talk about language interactions because they have the same mutual interest. So even if you're not learning the same language, you are more likely to gather more things by sharing that with someone else who's interested in language. And all of this just sticks, in my opinion. It ends up sticking instead of constantly getting reinforced by that awkward situation. I actually think that awkward situation makes people not want to learn language anymore, where people are being told, yeah, you got to have this experience in order to feel natural, and then suddenly it's the reason why they don't want to speak the language anymore, because they have repeated situations of awkward interactions. Like, oh, I learned a bunch of Japanese and suddenly all I got to say was yes, thank you, how are you, what's your order, this is what I want. Well, yeah, because that's the natural way of, like, that's what people do, like, when in those situations. If you meet a multilingual person, your odds go way up. Like, it goes way up. Or another language learner, it goes way up, and it becomes a confidence builder, right? It becomes a very comforting thing, which, at least in my opinion. And I'm glad to hear that you like sharing what you learned. That's pretty much my mantra. I sound like a broken record when I try to encourage people to share with me what they learn or something that they're interested in. So definitely, by all means, entertain me and I'll entertain you back. It's magic. That's what happens when I'm gonna quote someone that's very influential nowadays. Magic happens when open generosity is reciprocated by open generosity. So if you're willing to share, and by happenstance the person you're sharing with also is willing to share, then something bigger beyond the both of them become reality, right? It generates something beyond the two of them. And that type of stuff is easily, in my opinion, this is a hot take, is kind of the secret sauce to learning, right? If you build most of your learning motivations on these types of interactions, you normalize learning. And I want that to be a social norm. However, it's tough because people don't want to learn and be in those compromised situations. So that's perfectly all right. It's understandable. Awkward situations are certainly terrifying at times, although I think it can be a good thing every once in a while, because it creates just a natural atmosphere. Yeah. Oh, translating words in a conversation is helpful. Using what you already know, even if it's only lets you experience those emotions, it may give you a boost. Indeed. You love awkward situations when learning a language. I do too. I mean, I wouldn't be streaming my learning lessons if I was afraid of awkward situations. if you know what I mean. Like, what is the most terrifying thing you could possibly do when you're language learning? Oh yeah, stream yourself learning those languages and have every possible person try to correct you in real time. It's like, oh yeah, I did say that once before when I started learning Japanese. What was my first one? I don't even know how to say it anymore. Oh, atearai? Yeah, atearai would be my first block that so many people get on my case. Like, I know. I keep saying atearai instead of otearai. I got it. Those were the good days. Awkward situation when I ask someone how I'm doing as opposed to how you're doing. Like, oh yeah, hey. Or something like, what have you been doing tomorrow? Like, wait, what did I just say? You know? You know, it happens. I gotta do it. How can you make an awkward situation into a fun situation? You play it. You know, it gets smoother. How to get comfortable with awkward situations. Make awkward situations and see how you can react to them. Yeah, it gives me a laugh. I think I remember telling you the story of you calling your friend white. What does that mean? What was the second thing mean? White person? Oh yeah, you did mention that. Oh, the white thing. Yes, you did mention that, and I still don't know what that character is. Sorry, it's kind of tough when things occur rarely. I haven't encountered that character still. Feels bad, man. What was that character again? I know you're referring to the person. Oh, hair. That's right, hair. Oh, I did encounter that character. Why does it look so... Sorry. Yes. White-haired person. Sorry, my bad. That's Kami. Oh, Shirokami? Oh, no, wait. It wouldn't be Shirokami. Now that I know that those are the two characters, it would be Onyomi, right? So, would it be like, Oh, you could still use sheep, probably. What is a different read for... Yeah, what was the second meaning for that character? That's the take. Sorry. What am I supposed to do here? I don't remember what I'm supposed to do here. Oh, trappers. I don't... Remind me. Did your friend understand what you were saying? Or trying to say? Haku? Oh, okay, so it uses Haku. Okay. Haku. Hatsu. Okay, Hatsu. And then the other one is Shiroi Kami. Yeah, because of the Okurigana. Okurigana that's separating the two. This is what I've been sort of semi-practicing from Wanikani. The separation of what the tendency is to use which type of read. Yeah, Shiroi, because Shiroi is a Kurigani, so then Kami. Kami stands alone, which you usually use the kunyomi. And then Haku is my only read for onyomi for Shiro. And then Hatsu. Interesting. Hatsu is the other read, which is probably onyomi. He understands what I wanted to say because of context, but it still made him laugh. Worth it. Worth it. Think about it. Hear me out. Hear me out. If there's anything that I'm willing to risk an awkward situation, is to put a smile on someone's face. It's not awkward if it was intended to put a person on a smile face. But you know, if I was gonna say like, okay. I don't know how to say this, but I'm going to say it. Be warned. If you laugh, you owe me $1. I'm kidding. No, I didn't have anything prep. I was just, role playing here. Like, what is more worth than putting a smile? Man, you gotta not discount. People's gotta not discount about how to put a smile on people's faces. I'm trying to think of an example. Recent example. Oh, I botched sword, like katana. All right, katana and chikara. I botched katana and chikara. two times in a row. I told myself like, oh no, okay, that's okay. The first time I was distracted. Don't worry about it. And then immediately, like 2 prompts later, I got this. I instead of getting the read wrong, I got the translation wrong. Like, all right, fine, haha. Immediately, I go and blame the person I'm talking to, jokingly, obviously. So you see what happens when we have good discussions? You see what happens when we have great discussions? I think katana looks like chikara. Like, look at what happens. You would allow. Also, thanks for the chat. Yeah. Good night. Oyasumi nasai. Chiro. Formally, I would say something like, "下次见," right? Or bye bye is, it's English, but bye bye is I hope you get bye bye for the casual farewell, right? The casual farewell. Anyways, yeah, next time. Thanks for stopping by. Fantastic. You say bye bye a lot? Okay. I see. Yeah, oyasumi nasai. It's weird when things are that easy, huh? All right. Go up here. Okay. All right. Let's get this. I don't think we're gonna do any dungeon running today, are we? Maybe we'll just do a random stuff. I would be floored if there are some late night owls that want to do a dungeon. I do have to prep for tomorrow's, like... I might skip a day. Maybe I'll do it the day after. I'm kind of dragging my feet a little on reviewing Japanese. Like doing the Duolingo Japanese review. It'll happen, obviously. I am looking forward to reading sentences again in Japanese. Okay. Really? Okay. That's exactly who I was aiming at. Mm-hmm. That was a very invigorating conversation. What a pleasant... I hope this would be something that is a regular thing in the future. You know? People are ecstatic, immediately going to use the stuff. So palpable. I should do this thing. Which one is this? Is this the... Nope. Is this the supply thing? Oh. Okay. Supply thing was here, right? Yes. I was supposed to burn the supplies. Oh, you know what? I could ask Cheeto if they had like some sort of interaction with like TikTok and all that stuff. If that had any interesting interactions with their choice of starting Mandarin. Oh wait, yeah, so now we have to grab the supply up here, right? I don't even know where it is. Hello? Was it like the wood thing? Oh, no, wait. We gotta burn these. I could have sworn it was right here. Okay, I need to. This journal. I swear. Oh, it doesn't even label it. But it was here. Oh yeah, here it is. Then we burn it. I swear it's here. Excuse me? Right? Oh, you have to collect 2 of these. Wait, where is the second one? I genuinely do not see the second one anywhere. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. Then we build a fire right here, yeah? Yeah. Then we have to burn it. Don't you dare. Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll probably not do any dungeons today. Need my old sleep. You know? Need my old prep sleep. It's a type of sleep for old people. Older people. After dinner. I'm so heckin' energized from that conversation. All right. Oh, I was trying to let that hit me so it procs that. But then I got bopped. Oh, we did get a lot of lockboxes, so maybe we'll get some good gacha near the end. Right, to celebrate. I think I picked up maybe 20 of them, so that's whatever we grab. It's good enough. Let's make sure to complete our 4 repeatables. I don't remember what inside job is. I think that's the ballistas. Ballistae? Ballista? I think ballistae is singular. Right? English is hard. Oh, wait. We're going this direction. Okay. Come on. Friendly. Oh, maybe it's ballistae. Coming through. Friendly. Oh, really? Cooldowns. Okay. Okay. Oh, come on. I thought there was a ramp up here. Intriguing. Okay. All right. Okie dokie. Come on, pals. Okay. Okay. Ouchie. Okay. All right. Okie dokie. Runes. I know what this is. Oh, that was weird. Uh, eh, eh. 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 Hmm. Okay. Okay. There's one up here, right? Hmm. I sworn there was one. Okie dokie. Um. The heck? Oh. Okay. Where interacted with that? The heck? How? How? Oh. Alright. Okay. And can I just drop down here from here? Oh. Nice. Clap. Okay. Okie dokie. Alright. Alright. I think we're good. Pretty sure I got 4 repeatables as well along the way. And on back. All right. 1, 2. So that's okay. Got 2 more. Do we have 2 more here? Okay, so these are the 4. Then we 2 more. Come on. 1. All right. Do we get 1 more? Yes, we did. Nailed it. Hey. Ah. And there we have it. 3 characters through as above, go below. We'll look. Oops, I've got to do. Let's move and consolidate our boxies. Our boxies. How many do we get? 5? Okay. I got to move them to my barbarian because I don't know how many keys I have on this guy. Okay, 9. 9 boxies. Not bad, not bad. All right. First box, mythic. Double mythic. Yeah, all right. We have 18 boxes. All right. 18 boxes, right? Let's see what we get. 18 or bus. All right. Here's one. Oh, nice. Not bad. A mythic insignia. I'll take it. Kind of makes up the first time. That's the bonus reward. Ooh, that's a low roll right there. That's okay. I'll always take those. Eh. 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 Oh boy. Oh, I'll take the 100 bonus. That's not bad. Oh, this one's good, right? This one is the total damage. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's above average. All these reroll tokens. Wait, did I just get... Oh, no. It's fine. I'll take the bonus. A Black Eyes Warhorse? Alright. Sure. This Warhorse actually looks pretty cool. Oh. Oh. There you have it. Could open... How many to get to... We got 73. Do it for content. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's how many boxes do we need? Right. Let's grab 10 at a time, right? So waiting. So let's grab 10. For the content. Alright, 10 more boxes. Let's see what happens. It's up to 75. We'll open until 75. Right, the 1,000 reward. What is this one? Is this the... No, this one's like, okay. Meh. That's pretty low. Ugh. Okay, sorry. That stuff is pretty dang gross. Is this the bonus reward? Yeah, it's the... Okay. Gross. Yeah, I'll take those. Alright. I'll take those. Demonic empowerment. Which one is this? That's like meh. Alright. I stop at 75. I generally stop at 75. So let's do another 10. Entertainment value, right? To celebrate the end. Okay. That's okay. I could use that. We'll rotate another thing out. It's all good. I could just sell it. Don't really need inventory space. Okay. I can actually rotate that. Okay. It's epic. Oof. Ooh, a white owl. The owl bear. Aw. That looks pretty. That's a neat one. It is very cheap. Okay. Alright. And more. We're almost there to 75. Once we hit 75, that's usually where I stop. And then we wait for the next box. Okay. Alright. Okay. Or actually, I gotta make sure to, can you overload on... No, you can't. Okay. Alright. Okay. Ooh, 250. That's not too bad. Alright, then this is the bonus, right? Ugh. Okay. So we got 25 boxes left, right? Let's just buy the 25 boxes. Let's go. What did it say? 25 boxes or bust. Right. And we'll wrap it up in that way, right? Okay. Alright. Oof. Whoa. Look at all this currency. And just get insignias for days. What's up with all these insignias? Rep. Rep. Ugh. Ooh, 500. That's kind of neat. Ooh, more. Give me more. 10 left. 9. 8. 7. 6. 5. Oh, I haven't seen that in a long time. 4. 3. 2. 1. Alright. Well, there you have it. That's how gacha works, right? I think it was pretty okay. Everything was pretty okay. Overall, it was above average. Actually above average. Nothing super exciting happened, but good enough. I just go up to the 1,000 bar reward either before or ends there, and we wait for the next one, because by the time the next one comes around, we'll have enough keys for 75 again. Actually, half the keys, like a third of the keys or something, is on the other tune. All right. I could see. We'll give like 5 minutes. 5 minutes to see if there's any brave souls. I think it's pushing it on how late it should stay up. I'm gonna stay up today, but we might do the review the day after tomorrow, because it's getting really late. So I don't know. Kind of a tough call here. Well, all right. So time to wrap up our sentiments, right? I think this was above average. 6 out of 10, right? 6 out of 10. What are the highlights that make me very quite optimistic? I quite like how they're going about the dungeon things, right? Dungeon things remain individual loot. That's neat. So the armor and stuff, individual loot, fantastic. Actually, I got very, very lucky within the first couple runs, and then the rest, it was well. So it's kind of neat to see these things, and then I got some access to some rings. So that's kind of neat. Most of the things are still on my paladin though. So next module we'll probably do fighter. We'll do a fighter thing because the fighter is the most outdated. I still am. The jury's out still on like sets. I think artifact sets, the way they're distributed, is not the greatest, and I don't really know what type of suggestion to have because the turnover in interest is way too great, right? Having these accessible through maybe some form of long form consistency engagement, that might be okay, but these dungeon things, I haven't done. Like, look at this. Even when I attempted to do these things, I still didn't get like how many modules has it been? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When did I swap over to my paladin because they basically borked the heck out of the sentinel? It was probably right here, actually. So it's been 5 modules since I even got to see. Like, I didn't even see the drop. I didn't even see a drop corresponding to my class, like the present class that I am playing. So I did see a drop for others, which is not shown here. I did see a drop for like others. We collected a bunch of things for other characters, but I personally think limiting the drops to the classes that are present in the party is a compromise, because that means that you can't pick up. If that was the system, you would have to complete the dungeon with the class. So that can be a problem too. The trade-off is you wouldn't be able to collect pieces for other characters, and that would diminish the appeal of running it more than once. Well, once you get it, right? So it would decrease that. However, the alternative is picking these up based on your class, and you can exchange them for 2-to-1 or something like that. Actually, having some sort of exchange process in general for duplicates and like this would be great. Like, I ran it enough in the sense of where my bag is filled with random pieces. Like, just random pieces that I can't use, right? So regardless of how much I run something, the bag is filled with things that don't belong to the class, and it hasn't happened. No matter how often I ran things, like in this, the Moondancer one, I tried. Really tried. In both cases, actually. Oh, this is actually 2 modules. So this is 1, 2, 4, 5. It's been 5 modules of attempts, and I have not seen the paladin either. I think between the 5 modules, average 20 runs per module, so there's at least 100 runs between, and not a singular chance that has happened. I didn't even fight for the loot. Like, there wasn't a time where there were 2 paladins in and then you have to talk about it. There was that one time where the paladin is like, hey, I already have this piece, so if the other piece drops, would you care to give it to me? The answer is no, because it's it's fair and square, right? unless that person was saying, "Oh, I'll run enough so that you get your piece," then that is not an equal opportunity, right? And that creates that issue, and it's still that issue, really, because you still have to roll on these pieces. Like the end, you have to roll on these pieces. So they kind of kept a compromise, but I would say the most disagreeable, in my opinion, the most disagreeable thing is that didn't go full on individual loot, and then use the individual loot that has duplications and stuff to trade for currency, right? If you ran a dungeon and you have like 10 copies of the barbarian main hand and you don't want to use any of them, diminish return exchange, like maybe 3-to-1, 4-to-1. I will even take 5-to-1, gain 5 pieces, turn those 5 pieces into 1, because that involves completion, right? That's different from first boss farming or second boss farming. Those are all individual loots now, so that's a plus. So this stuff is wild. Like, it's so dissatisfying still. You end the day usually with this. So, not that it's any worse or any better than it was before. Individual loot still there, but it's not an improvement because it was held off from last time. So that's consistent across the board. So what has changed is I quite enjoy how narrow the masters, the difference between the masters and crystalline. That might be a minority opinion. If you're good, it speaks for itself. You don't even need actually, honestly, this doesn't even impress people to have. The idea is you're probably a great player and you've already done all the things, and there are cosmetics and stuff that would demonstrate your, like a fashion mark that demonstrates your aptitude. So making these two the mods that closer is fantastic. I think that's the plus for this mod, where the modifiers are not variant between the two sets, and it's a stat bump. And stat bumps raises caps, right? Raises caps, but it does not limit utility because the mods are the same. So that's fantastic. I think that's the biggest pro. In terms of Dread Sanctum, it's fantastic. It feels different. It's I'm not sure what it was like before, because I only did like the most recent memory was the Dread Vault thing. I mean the storyteller event, and it only had the last guy at the end, and that completely changed, right? So I do enjoy. Oh wait, never mind. It does have all the things. I actually do remember what the first boss and the second boss is. So the crystalline thing feels great. Honestly, that's like when you think of a dungeon, it sticks out. Most of the dungeons in trials in this game actually are quite varied. Obviously, the solution to doing them has become reduced to something pretty pedantic or redundant at this point. Not pedantic, redundant. However, Dread Sanctum presents a mechanic, although it can be frustrating when you're doing it and whatnot, it is punishable by not obeying mechanics. So that's neat. I think the Dread Sanctum is fantastic. I think the downside of its design is largely due to it takes a period of time to adjust to it. And enthusiasm for it may wane by the time it gets adjusted. So the next one could be as esoteric and interesting as this one. I think that's a great thing to do. How to keep people's attention to it, that's gonna be tough, right? The vast majority of players will run through with a predetermined team and just continue to do that. And due to my time slot and whatnot, rarely do you have opportunities enough. And even if you do the opportunities enough, you're not incentivized due to the nature of having to roll for these things. But in terms of gear, it's pretty cool. I really like their theme. Their theme continues to be wonderfully pragmatic forward, you know, pragmatism forward, functional forward. I don't mind seeing outrageous things. The problem with outrageous things is you still have to acquire them, right? Like if they end up putting outrageous modifiers on here, that would be great to experiment, but you sit there loot rolling. It's still a loot roll if it's individual loot. Like you're still rolling. Like I can't. There was one evening where 25 first boss kills and like 2 drops, right? And it's 2 drops I can't even experiment with. So that's it really, the loot system is something that I'm not the biggest fan of, but it is a way to increase home player retention. So Dread Sanctum, I enjoy the second boss and the third boss quite a lot. The third boss is fantastic. It's dynamic, it's really interesting. Healer's role is kind of low key, a little optional in Dread Sanctum. The tank role is fantastic. It's pivotal, might even be a little too pivotal. And Paingivers had a mechanic that was very dependent on the Paingivers. It was a nice boss. I think the last boss is most definitely a highlight. The music on the last boss is really, really good too, in my opinion. So all that's the centerpiece, right? The dungeon is the centerpiece. So 6 out of 10. I might even say 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10. Quality of life stuff, not so much, but we're not grading on quality of life stuff. There was one exception, and that's when they basically decided to diminish playability and utility of tank classes in general. So, however, because of the focus, and here's something interesting silver lining, due to the balance of gear oriented things towards support roles, I think during this period of this module, there were more instances of that awkward situation when you like queue up for an LFG. There were more, the tanks and the healer roles get filled first than the pain giver roles. So not that it happens really, really often. I'm saying it happens more than it used to, which was non-existent. Now it happens on occasion, and that's kind of neat. It shows the effect of having people who run, like, for example, it was a little bit difficult in the beginning to find people needing tanks or healers for Dread Sanctum runs. Although there were some, it was a lot harder to find tanks for the most part. However, occasionally the healer role gets filled all the time. So there is a lot of power dynamics going on. The tank role wasn't necessarily because there weren't a lot of tanks. The fail rate is very high depending on the tanks, right? So that was maybe a consequence of its design. However, in terms of loot, yeah, you can definitely tell the difference. It's very palpable when you start designing things that kind of gravitate towards what is desirable and what's not. And these pieces were great if I were able to get them, but like there's absolutely no way I can even do more than one character these days. Largely due to is a weird thing. And also there was this weird thing about the second boss. The second boss just doesn't ever drop anything. Like, or I haven't, like, I might have, the first time I might have gotten lucky because then I did not see, I don't even know how these pieces are distributed, but in terms of the second boss dropped like 1 or 2 things, and then that was it. Like I hadn't seen any at all. It's crazy wild variant. I don't particularly enjoy loot rolling still, but hey, it's not necessary for the next module, right? Look at how outdated this stuff is. It's not necessary for the next module, hopefully. Yeah, and then saying hi before you're heading to work today. Wait, you're heading to work now? Oh, yeah, it's late. Sorry. I just realized. Yeah, reverse schedule. Yeah, take care. I'm about to head to bed. Thanks for stopping by. Good luck with work, Gecko. I'll catch you next time. Thank you. All right, so this module was fine, right? It was above average. I like the dungeon. It's disappointing that the dungeon is great, but the interest retention is not there. But that is to be expected. I don't know how one would overcome this type of thing. Make it harder to get. That would backfire as well, and it's a tough situation. I'm gonna be curious what they're gonna do in the future. So here's some hot predictions. So let's brainstorm some stuff, right? What is the tweak? What are some quality of life tweaks? Let's do some hopium and copium stuff. Low key trade-ins for other pieces. So if you trade-ins for other pieces would also cause people to greed for them, and it would overall increases retention, right? Because you're working towards something. So not all in one looting for the artifact pieces. Maybe like a 5-to-1 ratio or a 10-to-1 ratio even. Like I couldn't even get 5 pieces after 20 runs. So 5-to-1 sounds like actually kind of reasonable. I would even argue 3-to-1, or they change it so where you can exchange your currency for other types of weapons, but when you're running the dungeon, it only drops according to the classes available to the party. Those are some hopium cases that I do see have an overall benefit for its compromise, right? There are compromises. We know that then you can't literally run the dungeon in order to get, the trade-off is you can't get drops from other classes that don't belong in your classes, and you happen to play a character that is not in the party at the moment, right? That still defaults to greeting though, so it ends up being a competition between everyone else. So I mean, there is a balance, and I think overall it works if the suggestion is to limit the drop potential loot boxes to the classes present in the party. So ultimately, every run, right, either ends up with a dupe or there's some sort of congratulatory celebration. Like, so at the end of a run, someone in that party will be happy, and then the other players may also be happy for that player or even consider running again, right? It's when no one gets anything, like none of the party gets something, it's when the run tends to stop because there's no hope, there's no like incentive that's like, oh yeah, that could be me next time. Most of the time, I would say 7 out of 10 times that I was running Dread Sanctum, by the time we get to the end, it's like, oh yeah, great, that's nice. Then no one wants that, and everyone, like a lot of people just pass, most of the time, and that immediately ends the run. So maybe one hot take or opium kind of thing. It's not a prediction. I don't think this will particularly happen. I'd be very surprised. Would be that this is confined to class specific drops for the end of dungeons and trials, even though trials there are a lot of classes. So I actually think trials should be over, like trial use a different type of loot system, actually make it individual, period. So no loot rolling or anything, because the feelings are even worse, right? You have 10 people, and then the 10 people know that there are other 9 people, and then when something drops and it happens to belongs to no one interested, then that is like the worst of all feelings that could possibly end a day, right? Let alone fail and whatnot. So having a consistent incentive to get something, or okay, no one has this, but at least we can. Someone's gonna pick it up, and it'll be one step closer to trading it in for something that they can use. Nice. Yes, you get separate currency already for that, right? Separate currency, but the idea is not attached to the drop. So the currency itself still is viewed as functional. Seeing the drop is not. In fact, I would argue if you gave me the option to get 3 extra more currency than seeing what the drop is, I would give that up in a heartbeat. In fact, like these pieces, if they gave me the option, oh, do you want to roll to see if you land on a piece of gear or get 2 extra currency, I would not have picked these up and just get closer to the weapon, right? With the weapon set. That's one of the natures of it. I mean, that would be an interesting alternative. Gamble on a roll that can hit 0, or like it doesn't spawn anything, or take the currency. Whatever the currency is. I forgot what the currency is called this time. Pirate booty? Something booty. I know that sorry, wrong thing. What is it? What is it? Is it this one? No. Is it this one? Unknowable coins? Yeah, unknowable coins. So unknowable coins, right? That's I would take the unknowable coins. So I think that's one of the last spots. Everything else deals with content creation. So content creation surprised me. I don't like. I don't do predictions or anything. I enjoy these modules because I actually have no predictions. So when whatever they do, I will probably enjoy it, raise some eyebrows, look at stuff. Mechanics surprise me, right? Mechanics. They can be mundane, they can be rehashes, whatever. I typically find it interesting. I think focusing on quality of life stuff is creating a bottom line satisfactory, consistent feeling of progress is a must for freemium games. And when you center stage your drop for completing something, and that is the most likely case of static progress, it is unfortunate. It's kind of like saying, oh, you worked really hard, but you're not getting paid today. At least you got a bonus. Here's your bonus. It's not the other way around. Like, usually I would say it could be interpreted like, oh, here's a paycheck for doing really well in this dungeon. Congratulations on picking it up. You can open your chest and stuff. But that isn't the main payout. The main payout is if you get the loot, the drop or something. So the chests and what's in the chest tend to feel like consolation. And in that regards, it's still not that great. Like the chest, you open it up and you re-roll, it doesn't overlap with the loot, right? You can't pick this up in the chest, which could be another alternative, like I suppose, but there are re-roll tokens, so this could end up deflating the playtime and the reward nature. But generally speaking, you can't get it in the chest, so everything is demarcated. You know, you can only get a certain piece according to a certain boss. You can only find certain things, and that's fine. I mean, that's reasonable because then it would incentivize going through all the bosses in the entire dungeon in order to gain chances at all the individual things. There's no overlap, at least not that I'm aware of. Other than, no, there aren't any overlaps. Like the chest can give you rings, but you can't get rings off bosses, that kind of thing. They're all segregated, which is very reasonable. At the end of the day, though, the main aspect of the things that leave, in my opinion, the worst feeling so far is the idea that you can do nothing. Like, I don't feel like maybe I feel like I'm doing it because I'm doing it, right? So I default no matter what. For if I were to place myself in the shoes of someone who's not repurposing or doing their experience for other reasons outside of the game itself, then it would feel like nothing, right? After the first 10 clears or 15 clears, it feels like nothing. For this, I think I've done 25 to 30 runs, and most of like a lot of them are unsuccessful. So, because it was in the beginning. Beginning is where it's unsuccessful. So when you get success, you get knocked down by this expectation. It's different. The hear me out though. This is not the norm. This is not the actual feedback that Cryptic or Dika would get, because the majority of the player base are established players. Those are the players that are staying. So if any casual things have to be done with a grain of salt, because if you're trying to grow the game, which it doesn't seem like it's growing, obviously it's not growing, it's like steady. It's a pretty much steady state with a slight natural attrition, like 1 or 2% attrition over time, right? The remaining player base find most of the stuff that I say a moot point. What they do is they gather their comrades and their incredibly OP outscaled people, and they would blitz through it as quickly as possible to get their thing. And then they would wash their hands of it, right? They would wait for the next one. And that's kind of what I do already, only minus the interest in the dungeon, largely because it's not friendly to anyone that isn't already established. And even myself, I don't enjoy, like for me personally, I do not enjoy having the same experience over and over again, in the sense of having to negotiate with opportunists. That is a world that other people thrive on, right? Oh, I got my loot first, I got lucky, you didn't get lucky, here, I'll help you out, let's run and see if you get your lucky. I'm not in that group. I'm not that target audience. But it strikes to me that they're more into that target audience still because of this whole loot system. I genuinely like playing PSO2 NGS more, largely due to the nature that the stuff you earn, the stuff you do constantly rolls over. And also the thing that makes players stand out is not attached to their ability to get lucky on loot rolls. It's their ability to express their character, right? And in this game, the form of expression that is most common is what gear do you have, right? So I can't really say that's a failure in communicating what the intent is. For me, still a 7 out of 10. I think it's still a 7 out of 10. There are definitely, I really like the Drag Sanctum. The loot system doesn't change, so it's not like I can knock it for something that it's already had. Yeah, and that's a wrap. I guess we'll be back in another 3 or 4 months with another one. As far as I know, 2025 is safe, right? It's safe for Neverwinter. I mean, I'll probably be here when it closes down. We'll talk about that in the future, but much like my emotional attachments to Neverwinter and the things I talk about, I'm also not devastated by something like Cryptic or Dika closing their game and going on to develop a different game, right? So it has its silver linings. It has its silver linings. So off to 3 and 4 months in the future. And by that time, I will be doing a lot of other things, right? So until then, folks, for the occasional person who's interested in Neverwinter or a live service model or freemium model, be aware of it. I suppose it's quite a fun game to play if you had some consistent friends, I suppose. But generally, these types of models require an investment that is very different from, like, say, hey, do you want to play Battlegrounds on Hearthstone? Like, yeah, we'll play a game. Let's hop into VChat and do a game and learn a little bit, and then we drop and we learn something. There's actually no loot at the end of Hearthstone Battlegrounds, by the way. So things like that, that's the difference between live service experiences. At the end of Fortnite, you have battle pass things, right? Or maybe the chance of doing well or winning the match, it doesn't end with loot, right? So, and NGS has loot too. ESO2 NGS has loot, and it feels like an afterthought when it comes to the loot thing. So it's extra to the experience. So we'll see how this mentality changes in the future, but I still like it. I mean, this is the only is this the game that is strongly loot based? This is the game. There is a chance I may move on from this, so let's not rule that out. But I've been playing Neverwinter for so long, it feels like a ritual now. 10 days, 10 days within a 10-week period every 3 or 4 months. Yep. And I log on every 30 minutes a day to contemplate about stuff while catching up on like my content creation stuff that people recommend and whatnot while playing this. So it's a nice relaxing thing. No investment required, like monetary investment, other than keeping your eyes busy, your hands busy a little bit while you, and I don't know, listen to language learning podcasts to learn a few phrases here and there, right? Until then, we're back to language learning largely to replace this, and then we have other video games to play. So until then, stay safe, enjoy, have a healthy relationship with live service models, subscriptions, moderation, try new things, all the best. And again, happy 2025. See you in the next module, everyone. Stay safe. Take care of yourself. Stay happy. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye bye.